y'all. It is Wednesday, May 13th, and exactly 1 week from today, next Wednesday, May 20th, is your last day of remote learning. So we are really winding down, and I'm super excited about that for you and for me. But today what we're going to do is we're going to go on and we're going to read chapters 16 and 17 of Number the Stars. So we're basically going to finish the book. But there is what's called an afterword in Number the Stars. And what happens in an afterword is a little bit different than an epilogue. Remember, we talked about an epilogue being like, where are these characters a week from now, a month from now, a year, or 10 years? Like in Tuck Everlasting, geez, it was like 50 years later when we found out what was going on. This is a little bit different. So an afterword isn't finding out what happens to the characters later. An afterword is really when the author decides that she's going to kind of flip the grid and talk to you, the audience, and kind of let you in on what she was thinking when she wrote the book. So that last part, the afterword, I'm going to do with you tomorrow. And what happens with that really is that Lois Lowry decides that she's going to talk to you in second person. So she's talking to you like you guys are sitting down having a cup of tea together. And she is going to tell you where she got her ideas for the book and how kind of all that came out as far as, remember, her friend gave her the idea, and it was related to some actual people that went through this process that these characters did in Number the Stars. So it's really cool. So today I'm going to read 16 and 17. You're going to do an exit ticket that I think is 3 questions, but they're really kind of reflection questions on the book. And then tomorrow I'm going to do the afterword, and I have just a brief activity that I want you to do for the afterword. There is not going to be a final test. Oh, I think I heard the hoorays. Did you all hear the hoorays? I think I did. So no final test on Number the Stars. The last grade that I'm going to take is your Number the Stars ABC book. So that will be graded next week, but it is due on Tuesday. So the last day of remote learning is on Wednesday. I want the ABC book on Tuesday. So that might mean that you have to work on it over the weekend if you haven't been using your time wisely on that book. Or it could mean that you've been using your time plenty wisely. I just checked in with a couple of people and their ABC books are done. So make sure that you are aware of that. ABC books are due on Tuesday. And then our last day of remote learning is going to be on Wednesday. So keep all of that in mind. Boy, I miss you guys. I miss this story in person. I miss seeing your faces. I miss talking to you and asking questions and hearing what you have to say and you guys asking me questions. But this is kind of what our new normal has been for the last 8 weeks, and I think we've adjusted pretty well. You guys are really doing a nice job keeping up on your work. So continue to do that. Finish strong. 5 days left and you can do this. All right, here we go. Lois Lowry, chapter 16 and 17. So we left off with chapter 15, and you guys taking your chapter 15, 11 through 15 test. And in chapter 15, Anne-Marie was headed to Uncle Henrik with the basket of food and that handkerchief that was a handkerchief is kind of like a tissue, except it's made of cloth. So when you wipe your face with it, when you blow your nose with it, you actually keep it. And then you wash it and use it over and over instead of like a tissue that gets thrown away or a Kleenex that gets thrown away. So anyway, there's a handkerchief in the basket and the food. She goes running through the woods because she knows that this package, which she didn't know at the time what was in it, but she knows the package is extremely important. Her mom was like freaking out about not being able to get that package to Uncle Henrik because of her breaking her ankle. But she does it. She does get stopped by soldiers. It becomes this scary kind of thing. And it's so funny because here she is thinking of Little Red Riding Hood going through the woods to her grandmother's house to deliver muffins or whatever she was delivering. And she gets stopped by the big bad wolf. Well, that kind of that's the story she's thinking of. And that's kind of like exactly what happened to her. So she's walking through the woods to take the basket of food to Uncle Henrik, and she gets stopped by the soldiers and their dogs, which kind of remind me of like wolves. Mean, kind of vicious looking, probably German shepherds, honestly, would be the type of dog that I would imagine they were. And that would be very wolf-like. So it's kind of ironic. Irony. So we would have talked about that in class if we were together. So now we are going on to chapter 16. She met up with Uncle Henrik. She gave him his stuff. He says, "Thank you so much. You saved the day." She doesn't know why she saved the day. All she did was delivered a handkerchief. So what in the world does a handkerchief have to do with saving the day? But I think we're going to find out. So here we go. Chapter 16 is, I will tell you just a little. Poor Blossom, Uncle Henrik said, laughing after dinner that evening. It was bad enough that your mother was going to milk her after all these years of city life, but Anne-Marie, to do it for the very first time. I'm surprised Blossom didn't kick you. Mama laughed too. She sat in a comfortable chair that Uncle Henrik had moved from the living room and placed in a corner of the kitchen. Her leg, in a clean white cast to the knee, was on a footstool. Anne-Marie didn't mind their laughing. It had been funny. When she had arrived back at the farmhouse, she had run along the road to avoid the soldiers who might still be in the woods. Now, carrying nothing, she was in no danger. Mama and Kirsty were gone. There was a note, hastily written from Mama, that the doctor was taking her in his car to the local hospital, that they would be back soon. But the noise from Blossom, forgotten, unmilked, uncomfortable in the barn, had sent Anne-Marie warily out with the milking bucket. She had done her best trying to ignore Blossom's irritated snorts and tossing head, remembering how Uncle Henrik's hands had worked with a firm rhythmic pulling motion. And she had milked. I could have done it, Kirsty announced. You only have to pull and it squirts out. I could do it easily. Anne-Marie rolled her eyes. I'd like to see you try, she thought. Is Ellen coming back? Kirsty asked, forgetting the cow after a moment. She said she'd make a dress for my doll. Anne-Marie and I will help you make a dress, Mama told her. Ellen had to go with her parents. Wasn't that a nice surprise that the Rosens came last night to get her? She should have waked me up to say goodbye, Kirsty grumbled, spooning some imaginary food into the painted mouth of the doll she had propped in a chair beside her. Anne-Marie, Uncle Henrik said, getting up from the table and pushing back his chair, if you come with me now to the barn, I'll give you a milking lesson. Wash your hands first. Me too, said Kirsty. No, not you too, Mama said. Not this time. I need your help here. Since I can't walk very well, you'll have to be my nurse. Kirsty hesitated, deciding whether to argue. Then she said, I'm going to be a nurse when I grow up, not a cow milker. So I have to stay here and take care of Mama. Followed as usual by the kitten, Anne-Marie walked with Uncle Henrik to the barn through a fine misty rain that had begun to fall. It seemed to her that Blossom shook her head happily when she saw Henrik and knew that she would be in good hands again. She sat on the stacked hay and watched while he milked, but her mind was not on the milking. Uncle Henrik, she asked, where are the Rosens and the others? I thought you were taking them to Sweden on your boat, but they weren't there. Oh, they were there, he told her, leaning forward against the cow's broad side. You shouldn't know this. You remember that I told you before. It's safer not to know. But, he went on, as his hands moved with their sure and practiced motion, I will tell you just a little, because you were so very brave. Brave? Anne-Marie asked, surprised. No, I wasn't. I was actually very frightened. You risked your life. But I didn't even think about that. I was only thinking of, he interrupted her, smiling. See, that's all that brave means. It means that you're not thinking about the dangers. You're just thinking about what you must do. Of course you were frightened. I was too today. But you kept your mind on what you had to do, and so did I. So let me tell you about the Rosens. See, many of the fishermen have built hidden places in their boats. I have too. Down underneath. I have only to lift the boards in the right place, and there is room to hide a few people. Peter and the others in the resistance who work with him bring them to me and to the other fishermen as well. There are people who hide them and help them along the way to Galilee. Anne Marie was startled. Peter is in the resistance? Of course. I should have known. He brings Mama and Papa the secret newspaper, De France, and he always seems to be on the move. He never stays anywhere for very long. I should have figured that out myself. He is a very, very brave young man, Anne Marie. They all are, said Uncle Henrik. Anne Marie frowned, remembering the empty boat that morning. Well, were the Rosens there? Then when I came to you, were they underneath when I brought the basket? Uncle Henrik nodded. But I heard nothing, Anne Marie said. Well, of course not. They had to be absolutely quiet for many hours. The baby was drugged so that it wouldn't wake and cry. Could they hear me when I talked to you? Yes. Your friend Ellen told me later that they heard you, and they heard the soldiers who came to search the boat after you left. Anne Marie's eyes widened. Soldiers came? I thought they went the other way after they stopped me. Oh, there are many soldiers in Galilee all along the coast. They are searching all the boats now. They know that the Jews are escaping, but they are not sure how, and they rarely find them. The hiding places are very carefully concealed, and often we pile dead fish on the deck as well. They hate getting their shiny boots dirtied. He turned his head toward her and grinned. Anne Marie remembered the shiny boots, confronting her on the dark path. Uncle Henrik, she said, I'm sure you are right that I shouldn't know everything, but please, would you tell me about the handkerchief? I knew it was important, the packet, and that's why I ran through the woods to take it to you, but I thought maybe it was a map or money. How could a handkerchief be important? He set the filled pail aside and began to wash the cow's udder with a damp cloth. Very few people know about this, Anne Marie, he said with a serious look. But the soldiers are so angry about the escaping Jews and the fact that they can't find them that they have just started using trained dogs. They had dogs, the ones that stopped me on the path in the woods. Uncle Henrik nodded. The dogs are trained to sniff about and find where people are hidden. It happened just yesterday on 2 boats. Those damn dogs, they go right through dead fish to the human scent. We were all very, very worried. We thought it meant the end of the escape to Sweden by boat. It was Peter who took the problem to some scientists and doctors. Some very fine minds have worked night and day trying to find a solution to those dogs' noses. And they have created a special drug. I don't know what it is, but it was in that handkerchief. It attracts dogs, but when they sniff it, it ruins their sense of smell. Imagine that. Anne Marie had remembered. The dogs lunged at the handkerchief. Even the soldiers said that the dogs smelled meat. But then when it smelled the handkerchief, it turned away. Well, now, thanks to Peter, we will each have such a handkerchief, each boat captain. And when the soldiers board our boats with the dogs, we will simply pull the handkerchiefs out of our pockets. The Germans will probably think we all have bad colds. The dogs will sniff about, sniff the handkerchiefs we are holding, and then roam the boat and find nothing. They will smell nothing. Did they bring dogs to your boat this morning, Uncle Henrik? Yes. Not 20 minutes after you had gone, I was about to pull away from the dock when the soldiers appeared and ordered me to halt. They came aboard, searched the whole boat, but found nothing. By then, of course, I had the handkerchief. But if I had not, well, his voice trailed off. And he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. She knew how important it was now. If she had not found the packet where Mr. Rosen had dropped it, if she had not run through the woods, if the soldiers had taken the basket, if she had not reached the boat in time, all of the ifs whirled around in Anne Marie's head. So they are safe in Sweden now? She asked. Are you sure? Uncle Henrik stood and patted the cow's head. I saw them ashore. There were people waiting to take them to shelter. They are quite safe there now. But what if the Nazis invade Sweden? Will the Rosens have to run away again? That won't happen. For reasons of their own, the Nazis want Sweden to remain free. It is very complicated, this war. Anne Marie's thoughts turned to her friends, hiding under the deck of the Ingeborg. Ooh, it must have been awful for them down there. So many hours. Was it dark in the hiding place? Dark and cold and very cramped. And Mrs. Rosen was seasick, even though we were not on the water very long. It is a short distance, as you know. But they are courageous people, and none of that mattered when they stepped ashore. The air was fresh and cool in Sweden. The wind was blowing. The baby was just beginning to wake as I said goodbye to them. I wonder if I will ever see Ellen again, Anne Marie said sadly. You will, little one. You saved her life, after all. Someday you will find her again. Someday the war will end, Uncle Henrik said. All wars do. Now then, he added, stretching. That was quite a milking lesson, don't you think? Uncle Henrik, Anne Marie shrieked, and then began to laugh. Look, she pointed. The god of thunder has fallen into the milk pail. All right, chapter 17. But boy, did we learn a lot in chapter 16. So the Jewish people are all now safe in Sweden, the ones that they were able to get across. And on your exit ticket at the top, there's a little fun fact. And that fun fact has to do with the Jewish population in Denmark that was saved by people in the resistance and very brave citizens like Uncle Henrik, like the Johansson family, even Anne Marie herself. And they ended up saving thousands of Jewish lives. So what they did was very brave and was a very big deal and made a huge difference in the population of Jewish people, especially in Denmark. So they saved a lot of people. And thanks to Aubrey for that little fun fact. That was actually something that I did know about Aubrey, so thanks for sharing that with me. But that gave me the chance to share it with everybody else. All right, here we go. Chapter 17. All this long time. The war would end. Uncle Henrik had said that, and it was true. The war ended almost 2 long years later. Anne Marie was 12. Church bells rang all over Copenhagen. Early that May evening, the Danish flag was raised everywhere. People stood in the streets and wept as they sang the national anthem of Denmark. Anne Marie stood on the balcony of their apartment with her parents and her sister, and they watched it all. Up and down the street and across on the other side, she could see flags and banners in almost every window. She knew that many of those apartments were empty. For nearly 2 years now, neighbors had tended to the plants and dusted the furniture and polished the candlesticks for the Jews who had fled. Her mother had even done so for the Rosens. It's what friends do, Mama had said. Now neighbors had entered each unoccupied waiting apartment, opened a window, and hung a symbol of freedom there. This evening, Mrs. Johansson's face was wet with tears. Kirsty was waving a small Danish flag. She was singing, and her blue eyes were bright. Even Kirsty was growing up. No longer was she a light-hearted chatterbox of a little girl. Now she was taller, more serious, and thin. She looked like the pictures of Lise at age 7 in this old album. Peter Nielsen had died. Let me make sure you hear that. Peter Nielsen was dead. It was a painful fact to recall on this day when there was so much joy in Denmark. But Anne-Marie forced herself to think of her red-headed almost brother and how devastating the day was when they received the news that Peter had been captured and killed by the Germans in the public square in Copenhagen. He had written a letter to them from prison the night before he was shot. It had said simply that he had loved them, that he was not afraid, and that he was proud to have done everything that he could for his country and for the sake of all free people. He had asked in the letter to be buried beside Lise. But even that was not to be for Peter. The Nazis refused to return his body and any bodies of the young men they shot that day. They simply buried them there where they were killed and marked the graves only with numbers. Later, Anne-Marie had gone to the place with her parents, and they had laid flowers there on the bleak, numbered ground. That night, Anne-Marie's parents told her the truth about Lisa's death at the beginning of the war. She was a part of the resistance too, Papa had explained. Part of the group that fought for our country in whatever ways they could. We didn't know, Mama added. She didn't tell us. But Peter did tell us after she died. Oh, Papa, Anne-Marie cried. Mama, they didn't shoot Lise, did they? The way they did Peter in the public square with other people watching? She wanted to know. She wanted to know it all, but wasn't certain that she could bear the knowledge. Papa shook his head. No, she was with Peter and the others in a cellar where they held secret meetings to make their plans. Somehow the Nazis found out and they were raided. They raided that place that evening. They all ran in different ways trying to escape. Some of them were shot, Mama told her sadly. Peter was shot in the arm. Do you remember that? When Peter's arm was bandaged and in a sling at Lisa's funeral? He wore a coat over it so that no one would notice and a hat to hide his red hair because the Nazis were looking for him then. Anne-Marie didn't remember. She hadn't noticed. The whole day had been such a blur of grief. But what about Lise, she asked. If she wasn't shot, what happened to her? From the military car, they saw her running, and they simply ran her down. So it was true what you said, that she was hit by a car? Yes, that was true, Papa told her. Oh, they were all so young, Mama said, shaking her head. She blinked, closed her eyes for a moment, and took a long, deep breath. So very, very young, with so much hope. Now, remembering Lise, Anne-Marie looked from the balcony down into the street. She saw that below, amid the music, singing, and the sound of the church bells, people were dancing. It brought back another memory, the memory of Lise so long ago wearing that yellow dress, dancing with Peter on the night that they had announced their engagement. She turned and went to her bedroom where the blue trunk still stood in the corner as it had all these years. Opening it, Anne-Marie saw that the yellow dress had begun to fade. It was discolored at the edges where it had lain so long in folds. Carefully, she spread open the skirt of the dress and found the place where Ellen's necklace had lain hidden in the pocket. The little Star of David still gleamed gold. Papa, she said, returning to the balcony where her father was standing with the others watching the rejoicing crowd. She opened her hand and showed him the necklace. Can you fix this? I have kept it all this long time. It was Ellen's. Her father took it from her and examined the broken clasp. Yes, he said, I can fix it. When the Rosens come home, you can give it back to Ellen. Until then, Anne-Marie told him, I will wear it proudly myself. And that is the end of Number the Stars. So I hope you guys like this book. Tomorrow we'll read the afterword, okay? Hugs and kisses to you all. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.